Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ever Strong Coaching Podcast. My name is Liam Hubbard, and I'm co hosting today with Dr. Carla Steingraber, the head of Ever Strong Coaching. And our guest today is Kyle Bergh. Kyle, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure. Yeah, happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, and before we get into things, I'll just briefly introduce Carla and Kyle to our viewers to just give a bit of a sense of who we're talking with today. So, Carla is a licensed clinical and sports psychologist with training in neuropsychology as well. She is based out in the Chicago area in Northbrook, Illinois, and she's been practicing for nearly 20 years now. She's a certified mental game coach and works with athletes across the board from people just learning how to dribble a basketball for the first time to professional jujitsu artists. So, really, the whole range there, and works with athletes to improve their mental skills to show up better on game day. She also serves on the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation for informal hearings about ethical complaints against psychologists. And Kyle, who we are so grateful to get to speak with today, is based out of Vancouver, British Columbia. He earned a master's degree in human kinetics with a specialization in mental performance consulting. And while he was there, he played for the men's university hockey team. And now, as part of his work with his private practice, Will Point Mental Performance Consulting, he primarily specializes with hockey players, helping them reduce their own self-imposed barriers with their mental game. But similar to Carlo, works with youth athletes all the way up to seasoned professionals. And we are so glad to have a great discussion today. So, Kyle, thank you again for being with us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. It's so great to have you. Well, I was certainly curious to hear a little bit about your hockey journey, where it started, how your role evolved, and what some of the key moments were that shaped you.
Yeah, absolutely. Be my pleasure. Um, yeah, I think like most kids, or I guess maybe not most kids, but a select number of kids, I felt just grateful to find something early that you knew was a part of you and you knew you loved, and it just felt kind of ingrained in your DNA as a kid, and maybe all your decisions were directed towards this thing in your life, your sport. So that was from a very early age, and was grateful to be in a position to kind of continue climbing, as you're always next step, you're always looking ahead, and you're maybe
Mm.
not making the most comprehensive decisions, but you're making decisions based on where you'll be a year from now. And things were going great, things were going really great in my career. I moved away from home at 15 to join an academy, and
Wow.
so was training every day and doing really well, and um, ended up making the jump to junior hockey the following year, which was amazing. And then just kind of out of nowhere, had this freak injury in practice, which led to, I'd say, the better part of 2 years with post concussion symptoms, where
Wow.
basically it was a daily introspective process of trying to analyze how I was feeling, if I was okay to return to play. A lot of ambiguity around, because it wasn't maybe a simple concussion that, the really clear cut symptoms. It was a lot of the peculiar kind of mental fog. So that just led me down a journey of kind of self analyzing, for better or for worse, and getting really curious about how my own thinking, how my own psychology affected kind of myself and my environment around me.
Well, that's incredible. I know with concussions, sometimes people have a personality change afterwards. Sometimes they even develop a kind of mood disorder afterwards. It can be so confusing because people often just don't feel like themselves afterwards. How did you cope with that?
Yeah, again, I guess I was lucky or not in a way, based on my symptom profile, where I wasn't experiencing some of those extreme symptoms, but these acute long term symptoms. But it really led to, I think the way I guess I dealt with it was as you know, maybe that athletic mentality really became leverage for me because I just threw everything possible I could at it, whether it was
Mhm.
nutrition, whether it was beginning to do ice baths, saunas, you know, meditation. I kind of just looked and I said, hey, I don't know how or when, but I know I'm going to get to the end of this tunnel. So that was really kind of my approach, and things started slowly to catch. I started to kind of venture out and try some alternative approaches. I was doing physio, I was doing, you know, chiro, everything possible. And I started to kind of get curious, ask questions, do my own research, and things just, the more I went inward, the more kind of things slowly started to take shape outwardly too.
Well, I mean, it's certainly been my experience that after somebody has sustained a concussion or some kind of head injury, that they're not really having an easy time getting access to information and resources as to what they could try, what would be helpful. And they really, kind of like you're describing, have to do so much of their own research and advocacy to get the services that might be helpful. Uh, it's such a challenge. Any thoughts on the evolution? Because already, when I was doing my postdoc many years ago, it was already like that. So I'm surprised it's still like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was around 2016. And I'd love to say, in kind of reflection, we have come a long way, even seeing kind of the evolution of the SCAT and some of our assessment tools. And I think maybe the biggest challenge for me was the removal of physical activity. They basically shut me
Mhm.
down and gave me the not quite the dark room, but not far off of that, which for, you know, a teenager who's, you pull their meaning, you pull their basically their social environment away from them, that's gonna compound upon kind of the situation I was facing. So that to me was the hardest thing to cope with, was just the removal of, and that feedback loop I had that sport gave me and provided meaning. But yeah, I think I've done a little bit of investigation around kind of the concussion diagnostic process now, and funny enough, it was something I continued to pop up as I was able to eventually return to sport and keep playing at the collegiate level. I still dealt with things and was more susceptible to things, but it was interesting
Mhm.
being able to be reflexive, having had the previous experiences, and then kind of being studying psychology while being an athlete. I'd like to say I became a bit more optimistic in terms of just the direction we're heading, and yeah,
Okay.
the knowledge we have and the education around it.
Yeah. Did you ever feel any kind of pressure from others or yourself to downplay symptoms or rush back into play?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No one as much as myself. I was, you know, and I think it's interesting because you look at the correlation between, you know, some maybe just not generalized anxiety symptoms, but just some of the anxiety you can bring upon yourself in the course of this. It mimics some of those concussive symptoms. So there was such a pressure on me to consistently analyze and, hey, do I have that little bit of headache today, and how am I feeling a bit dizzy? And I would constantly try to kind of assess and associate, is that me bringing on these symptoms or is it the objective injury? So but no
Yeah.
one was as hard upon, you know, upon my, I think there was some great coaches and support staff for my teammates, but I was certainly the driver of some of the challenges and pressure to come back.
I mean, it is really hard, right? Because when you have some kind of a physical injury, you can actually watch the healing. Um, and with a brain injury of some sort, it's a lot harder. So, did you find that it affected your confidence, your focus, or even your trust in your brain or in your body in any kind of way?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really interesting thing to kind of draw conclusions from, but in my case, and this was maybe for better or for worse, because I continued to play while symptomatic for quite a while, but I was still having success. I
Mm,
felt like the time I would be out on the ice was sometimes the only time I could get out of my head and just tap into kind of that, you know, that body's programming and muscle memory. So um, yeah, I think that was a real unique part of it, where you're maybe not getting, you know, like I said, in my case, I wasn't getting that hardcore feedback from the environment of you need to stop. Um, so again, these things are complicated, and I think the best decision I made was eventually got to a point where I said, hey, I need to I need to prioritize my long term well being. And luckily enough, had a strong support network to kind of help me, but certainly wasn't an easy decision.
Yeah. Looking back now, is there anything you wish more coaches, teammates, or even fans understood about the connection between concussions and mental health?
Yeah, I think I'll loop back just to and maybe it's something that's I hope in the rear view, but I think prioritizing just the environment. Like I said, the meaning that I got from being around socially and being removed from that was really challenging. So any way we can mimic those kinds of systems without exacerbating, the individual's injury, I think, or I put that right at the forefront, whether that's bringing them in or involving them in alternative ways, practices, or training. That's kind of the biggest thing I find. And in my work now, right, as in mental performance, I think there's lots of interesting ways, alternative ways we can cultivate meaning, whether that's not directly engaging in their sport, but maybe that's personal development, right? Maybe that's things
Right.
that are ancillary to their sport, but we can still help them develop so they get that positive feedback loop of, hey, I am improving, I am working towards these things, and it might not be the same things I'm training when I'm in sport, but it can be things that are going to help me, whether that's cognitively, in any capacity when they do return.
Yeah, I think working towards a goal of some sort is such a big aspect to feeling good about ourselves, maybe even more than actually achieving the goal. It's really the journey uphill that's so impactful. And when you're an athlete, it's really concrete. Those goals are right there for you, set in stone, whether they're PRs of some sort or the next tournament or improving a particular skill. So leaving sport can be such a difficult transition. What helped you with that?
Yeah, well, I kind of alluded to it in just saying I got really curious about kind of about learning about myself, and I'd say I was the guinea pig, and I probably spoke to your colleague Liam a little bit about this, but that was just a period for me of exploration. I just grabbed any book
Yeah.
I could, and it just led to another book. Started with sports psychology, and then it led into philosophy, and it led into different avenues. But I really find that was a deep way for me to kind of leverage, again, athlete mentality. You're always looking to optimize, you're always looking to improve. How can I leverage this time I have to find kind of ways to look outside of my field to actually improve at my craft? And I always tell people
Mhm.
this. I'm like, I learned more about hockey, and I think I improved at hockey by going into other avenues than I ever learned about,
Mm.
reading a book or sometimes through my specific training in hockey.
Yeah, yeah. Well, today you're helping other athletes through some of these same transitions. What are some of the most common identity struggles you see?
Yeah, especially out out in Canada, we have a unique, I'll call it unique, just youth hockey program where um, there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of outcome metrics, and I think you see 15, 16 year olds that are heavily oriented towards whether it's getting drafted, making a certain team. So I just see um, and I think maybe I prefaced it in the introduction, but that was very much my perception too as a young athlete, was what is the next team I can make, and just lacking being where your feet are. So that's certainly something where there's maybe not a depth of self awareness of that individual's identity and just who they are as a player, and trying to really be there and do exceptionally well where they're at, but a kind of constant forward looking orientation to what lies ahead, which we
Mm.
know maybe isn't always facilitative to performance, let alone well-being.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and even kind of having your life be full of other things, just like you were saying, you started to rely on outside readings, and that can be so wonderful because you feel like you're learning more, you know more, you understand better. Uh, Pretty much anything is translatable into other areas of your life. It's really fascinating. The more you learn, the more you know, the more you know, the better you feel. It's incredible. Are there particular tools in that regard that you use with any of the athletes you're dealing with? Because not everybody, at least I found, is willing to read the books I recommend.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I find, yeah, you're trying to kind of, as an applied practitioner, you're kind of trying to dance that line where you want to give your athletes really practical tools that they can apply, but you also want, and I am a big advocate for, you want to help them develop self-awareness. You want to help them develop a keen sense of identity so they know kind of when and where to apply those tools. And as you're well aware, those tools, there's no magic algorithm on those tools. It's these things like, having breath work, having routines, having things they can go to just to manage their you know physiology and such. But I think
Right.
really, if you can, you know I find myself leaning towards doing a lot of values based work, and like I said, kind of just understand identity work. And then I think we piece that, and sometimes they surprise themselves and they go, "Wow, I really do prioritize learning and I prioritize growth in my sport," and that's such a strong sense of, um, you know, why I love doing my sport. And then I say, "Hey, well, there's lots of
Mm.
ways you can fulfill that value you have," and then kind of the pieces click. And I've been really, really impressed with a lot of these, 14 to 20-year-old. Um, Hockey can be labeled as a bit of a masculine sport, and these individuals are reading, they're listening to podcasts, on road trips, on
Mhm.
buses, and I really think, there is maybe hopefully a cultural shift going there towards just personal development as a whole.
Yeah. During your playing days, did you have any access to mental skills coaching or sports psychology support?
Yeah, not very minimal, but one of the teams I worked with, which was in hindsight a bit of a catalyst, we brought in a sports psychologist who facilitated kind of a week of workshops and private and group stuff. And that was someone I've continued to rely on to be a mentor, Dr. Saul Miller. And so that was a real eye opener, definitely. But it was largely out of the equation. Otherwise, just kind of this one team happened to invest in a week of it.
That's incredible. It's a big investment. Were there any particular strategies that made the biggest difference for you, either in competition or in recovery?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the big leap, and it's something I see sometimes with my athletes, was just like, whoa, I'm here, and I'm actually spending time creating a canvas to think about this, right? Like I remember just the first time I sat down, and even leaving the first session, I was like, whoa, I just spent 45 minutes like training that thing that you know you don't have to spend a minute convincing me the importance of it, but why has that never been a part of my framework until now? Why has that never been a part of my process? And I think we can all attest to it. It's invisible, right? And we don't totally know. We can't go and squat confidence or curl our resilience. We don't know. I didn't
Yeah.
tangibly know how to go about doing it. So that was, I think, just being like, whoa, I'm here, and I'm entering in this a conversation with another individual about these things was a powerful awakening.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you went to Ottawa's grad program, the only one in Canada designed for CMPCs. What kind of first drew you to that path, and how did that work? How did that shape the work that you do so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe like in undergrad, I was very kind of at this crossroads of, do I go clinical and get training and go a bit of a wider umbrella, and then of course kind of work backwards into sport, into a sportsistic population with that training, or do I just go and put all kind of my eggs into the performance realm? And I was still very much feeling pulled toward a clinical orientation. Again, my readings and some of my studies and interests were a little broader outside just sport and performance. But I think the minute I went through the interview process and then I started to actually look into the nuts and bolts of the programs, I just saw my values really aligned with on the well-being, and not just going from not doing great to good, but how do we actually go good to great. And that was something I really, and just some of the professors in that Ottawa program and their work, it just, the minute I'm like, hey, we're speaking a certain language here, and it just kind of
Yeah.
clicked. And that just, yeah, went forward from there.
Hi, everyone. What's your Everest? We all have a mountain we're trying to climb. My book here, What's Your Everest? How to Win in Sports, Career, and Life, while enjoying the ascent is here to help you with your journey to the top while enjoying the climb. It's written for both teens and adults who are looking to grow, push themselves, and believe bigger. It's available on Amazon. And if you find this book is helpful to you, even with one step up the mountain, I'd truly be grateful for your review. Keep climbing. You've got this.
Sports psychology, since it's a newer field within the psychology realm, it can be more difficult to navigate the search process for programs. How would you recommend approaching that for a student who's kind of in that earlier phase of the process?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and I can speak a little bit to my process, but I don't think there's one way to go about doing it. But anytime when you make a big decision like that, there's lots of variables you want to understand, environment, and I think you can't go wrong with looking at environment and the quality of people. And something I always advise is just choose who over what. In hockey, anytime I made um, like I said, an outcome oriented decision, I was always, okay, what am I, is this the best level? Is this the highest? Blah, 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 blah. And instead of putting my priority upon, well, who are the people there? And the choosing quality people will, I think, advance you, far more than just choosing, out of ego or out of status over the long run. So that was something that really stood out. Um, I know with U Ottawa, for me, the alumni net, it's such a rich alumni network. And again, the specifics of it, where I'm going to be entering an alumni network with all these individuals doing something very similar to me, was appealing. Um, but there's really no kind of cut and clear. But I think you can look at coursework, you can look at kind of quality of alumni, but it's a hard question. Those are just a couple thoughts.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle, mental performance is getting more attention these days, but it's also becoming a lot more commercialized. Where do you think the field is being misunderstood, especially in the age of content and social media?
Yeah, tremendous question. It's a really unique. I spend a lot of time thinking about this. Just to preface, especially being an early career professional, and yeah, you feel kind of constantly flooded by I have to do this, I have to do that. Oh, here's someone with a ample following and a great business model that maybe it doesn't have the comprehensiveness of training. So I think the field's I'm really optimistic about the field as a whole in terms of seeing where we'll be in 5-10 years. But with that said, it's hard not to be a little pessimistic in terms of where we are now. I think we have a lot of
Mm.
work to be done, especially in Canada. I think you look at maybe the impact and awareness around ASP and around even just athletic bodies' commitment to integrating mental performance in their you know player development offerings, and we're quite far behind in Canada from my perspective and what I see. But yeah, it's not an easy field by any means, and I could go on several different tangents as an early career professional. But you have the business aspect of it, which is largely lacking in a lot of graduate programs,
Mm.
and of course just learn. Yeah, I think the business is really the big part of it. In addition to consulting, learning how to manage your time, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure. Have you run into any ethical challenges or blurry lines, especially with the rise of performance influencers or advice online?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess my a lot of my time and energy is in the hockey realm, and but yeah, there's a lot of different people doing different things under different titles. That's kind of just the truth of
Yeah.
the matter. And I try my best to be an advocate for, hey, there is something that exists, right? There is an accreditation here that is showcases certain competencies, and um, try my best to kind of put that forward. But it's been there's all you need to all and the big thing about ethics is you always need to be on it on the forefront, because there could be, if you're working with a team, there could be other athletes that you've associated with on other teams, right? Where do you do your consultations? Do you do them in private? Do you do them in a public space? What about on the bus, if teammates can see and I think the biggest thing, and I've learned through grad school and even through as I begin my practice, is just being, like I said, being really deliberate, intentional, and upfront, and front loading those kinds of things with your clients and engaging in those discussions. And something I'm really grateful that the University of Ottawa was, they really told us the mechanics of consulting at a high level. So how do you actually onboard a client? How do you do a needs analysis? How do you kind of go through these types of processes and procedures so you can put yourself in a position to do good work and of course do no harm.
It's interesting, right? Because on the one hand, sports psychology is treated like coaching. And so coaching can be done in a group. And if you're teaching breath work, for example, or visualization, it's not that it is so personal. But at the end of the day, athletes are people too. And they have personal things going on and families and anxieties and stuff like that that inevitably come up in the sessions. Is there anything in particular you feel needs to shift, either in education or standards or awareness to better support both athletes and the professionals guiding them?
Nothing jumps to mind in terms, but I think just, yeah, from my standpoint and seeing kind of what's, I always just tell people how grateful I am to be working in this space and how delicate of a process it is, and that I treat it with the utmost respect. To enter a client's personal world, I think it's really easy to neglect the fact that, oh, we're doing mental performance, it's sports psychology, yeah, 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 we're not doing, clinical work. But with that said, there's an essence there and importance that there is a therapeutic alliance, most certainly, right?
Mm.
So I think that is something that we cannot downplay, and that as practitioners we have the um, obligation to make sure we're informed and we're up to speed on best practices. So that's obviously, ethics is an ongoing thing. It's not something, hey, one day I cracked the code, I have the perfect process, all my athletes are yeah, I never have to worry about it. It's always something I'm trying to evaluate and reflect on myself.
Yeah, and I guess going back to your earlier point that there are all kinds of certifications with less requirements. I mean, there's some certifications that are just 10 hours and that's it. You're certified, and people using titles like life coach or whatever it is. And obviously, with these online platforms that are popping up everywhere that are selling therapy, which is not a protected term, at least not in the United States. um, yeah, so they're selling therapy, but it's just somebody at the other end of the line, probably texting or something like that, that has very minimal training. And yet, of course, anyone reaching out is reaching out for help, and they're assuming or expecting some kind of legitimacy behind the credentials of the big business. So it's definitely something that we see a lot. And like you said, the care that needs to be executed when you're dealing with somebody's life, someone's, the whatever personal issues that are coming up. Well, it's been a really powerful journey that you've had both personally and professionally. Are there things you're most passionate about in terms of changing the conversation around athlete mental health or athlete performance?
Yeah, I think the big thing, as you probably gathered to this point, is mental skills training's amazing. It was a big initial part of my process too, as an athlete working through injury and integrating mental skills. And I know anyone who goes through kind of a standard sports psychology training, you'll get heavy cognitive behavioral methods, right? As a field, sports psychology is largely relied on kind of a CBT model, very much.
Right.
And I think that some of the advances that are being made in ACT and some of these other, even for me, kind of existential approaches are really exciting.
Yeah, and that's all particularly important, I think, not just throughout a young person's life, but certainly before they leave college. Because if they had been hoping this whole time of having a professional career in their sport, it's a tiny percentage that gets to go do that. And it's so
Yeah.
important that there is kind of that mental flexibility of having that plan B or that alternative that still allows them to feel like they can accomplish things that mean something to them. It's really important.
Yeah, and just kind of on that note, a really funny not a story I continue to think back on was in my thesis defense. I was kind of speaking to, hey, I'm a little, I'm heavy on this identity exploration stuff and having them learn who they are and et cetera, et cetera. And one of my supervisors just said, well, athletes don't want to do that. They just want the quick fix. They just want the breathing technique, the plug and play. So what do you think about that? And I paused for a minute and I just kind of thought to myself, well, maybe that's a bit of the problem, isn't it? That we're all
Mhm.
geared towards, hey, what is going to get me to what's going to help me make that AAA team, make that college program? And like I just said, without kind of a sense of the underwhelming why are we actually doing this thing? I think we can be running around in circles and chasing our tail and putting band aids on bullet holes a little bit. And I'm sure I'm really impressed with the kind of media it's gotten, but the whole Scotty Scheffler interview in the past few months
Mhm.
around this guy just keeps winning and he can't stop winning, yet he's in press conferences kind of talking about how it's not fulfilling his deepest
Right.
desires. And there's this
Yeah.
paradox here where we have a guy who isn't consumed by winning, but is still doing exceptionally well. So
Yeah.
it's a
Well,
unique
he had
time.
to make a real shift at one point. Some years ago, he made a shift. I think he actually worked with a sports psychologist and was able to readjust. Yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, I think some of these things you're bringing up are really symptomatic of the times, and not just for athletes. It's that in general, right now, society really wants to lean on quick fixes. Give me a quick pill. Uh, take care of all these issues. And I'm not trying to downplay the relevance of medication in certain scenarios, but really, we do want quick fixes right now. Even just scrolling on the internet or whatever it might be, it's a quick fix for how we're feeling, as opposed to doing something that might be a bigger investment in ourselves over time, but takes a little bit more effort.
Yeah, 5 steps, 10 steps, right? 5 steps to mental toughness, and again,
Right.
maybe that goes a bit back into my point of just treating the craft with a certain sense of respect and appreciation for the complexity of you know the mind, and maybe that's a small tidbit people can be aware of if anyone's kind of trying to package something into 5 steps. Just take it with a grain of
Yeah.
salt and be critical consumer.
I
Yeah.
was just gonna I was gonna ask you, Kyle, I'm curious, what would you say specifically to athletes who are skeptical or resistant to the idea of really digging into not the quick fix, really getting into some serious work? What would you say to them?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, I'm not too sure if there's much I can say, but what I know I can do is I can invite them into a relationship, and I think from there maybe we all have this kind of intrinsic innate drive to express ourselves. And I've heard the idea of kind of the lamppost effect. We'd all be a heck of a lot better off if we just had a lamppost to talk to for 20 minutes a week. And I think people tend to, if you're able to, again, leverage the not leverage, but have a firm relationship that they can express that for themselves. And I don't really see it as my job. Yeah, of course I need to, but I don't see it as my job to sell them on that or to give them a sales pitch of why that's important. Of course I can inform them and create a safe, welcoming, nurturing, collaborative environment, but I don't see it as much my job to convince people or sell them on the importance of that.
I love that.
Mhm.
And for athletes who are interested in committing to really working on their mental skills, but maybe are, while they are interested in that, a little bit hesitant to open up. Can you talk more specifically about how you create that nurturing environment and connect with athletes?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's there's no maybe yeah, there's no one way. It's gonna look different for every individual, right? I know with youth athletes, maybe I'm working with a young hockey player and it's talking about their curve on their stick, or it's talking about what gear they're using this year. Like you're just trying to find some common ground and really get to know them for who they are and their interests. But yeah, it's highly individual. Sometimes it takes several sessions of just kind of experiment and try things out. You try to just kind of meet clients where they are, and your ability to kind of, in grad school we learned there's the ladder of abstraction, there's the highly abstract thinkers, and there's more concrete, and you need to be able to kind of slide that along that ladder.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, Kyle, the name of this podcast is What's Your Everest? So, what is your Everest right now?
Oh goodness, that's a great question. Hard to say. It's something that's been ever changing. That's for sure. But I think it's hard not to say something along the lines of there's a real sense of, as an athlete, my commitment to being my best self was largely for myself, was to be play at the highest level, XYZ. And I think now there's a real it's amazing. It's an amazing sense of, hey, when I am trying to be at my best and I'm trying to learn and grow, and that's kind of what it is, right? To enter into this profession, you get, like I said, what an amazing field that we get to, by us prioritizing our learnings, growth, and development, we're simultaneously kind of welcoming people into that process to help them do the same thing. So, quite simply, yeah, my leveraging not leveraging my own kind of development to allow others to do the same.
Very nice. And for young people who see you as their Everest, any particular advice you could give them?
That's a great question. Yeah, advice. Well, I love I can't remember if it's Sam Harris or not, but the idea that wisdom is taking your own advice. So I'd say largely take your own advice first and foremost before
Mhm.
you take anyone else's. But um, I think my thing and what I really lean back on in my playing experience, and now into this applied experience, is explore to express. If you explore, and this is kind of a theme you guys have gathered by now, but if you explore yourself, and you that self exploration, whatever that might be, is going to lead to you being able to express yourself more fully in the various roles you play. So that's my best advice. And I had a mentor who is in the field of counseling, and I asked a similar question: "What's some advice?" And she just said, "Live an interesting life." And I was like, "Whoa,
Mm,
okay, this isn't get more training or read more books. It's, as in this field, you are the tool, you are your product, you
you
are your
are.
service. You're not selling a PDF, or you're not selling something that can help business. You're selling yourself largely."
Yeah, that's something that's often misunderstood. Very often you'll see a client who's frustrated with their therapist or something like that, and there isn't the total understanding that some of that is a transference reaction. That there's something to be understood, because most likely the therapist didn't actually do something to trigger that. So, definitely an interesting subject matter. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really interesting to learn about your journey, and I think you gave us a lot to think about.
My pleasure. Yeah, if anything, hopefully some alternative perspectives, and like I said, I think it's a really interesting time to be in this space, and I'm more than anything just grateful to be able to, yeah, connect. As you guys well know by now, there's so many great people, and with similar missions, so it's really exciting. And yeah, thanks for allowing me to be a small part of it.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. I think you
Wonderful.
shared a lot of really valuable insights for our listeners and viewers. So we're very grateful for that.